Hi, Lizzie. Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. I feel like it's been a while since we did a podcast together. So, welcome back. I think this will be a really interesting one. This season, I decided to really pivot to talking about business and psychology. And Lizzie actually brought a few great points up for some podcast episodes that really do align with that messaging. Today, we're going to be diving into to review or not to review. And I think this is a really interesting topic, and there's a lot to dive into from both the business side and also from the psychology side. One interesting stat was that 95% of shoppers read online reviews before making a purchase, and I am definitely one of those 95%. I don't know about you, Lizzie. And it definitely helps to influence people's buying decisions. So today we wanted to break down the psychology behind that, and also like if you've had any experiences with leaving reviews, do you tend to leave reviews or not? So I think we're just going to open up the conversation and start talking about why people do leave reviews in the first place. So Lizzie, what's your take on that?
So I do and I don't read reviews. I for some reason I think being in like retail, I'm a little bit open-minded when it comes to reviews only because I have seen people complain like water can literally be too wet for some people, and that's sometimes like just being human. And I have found that I do feel more motivated when I have experienced a bad experience and I leave a bad review. I would like to think that from my point of view, if I leave it, it's more so that way people don't get the same experience that I did.
Right.
However, sometimes like I try to remedy the situation first. Like if there's something that can be fixed in person, like mistakes happen, things happen, and if that can be fixed, then I won't be motivated to kind of review. It's only when like I feel like I'm like, hey, meet me halfway because something was like mistake. It's when they don't try or they don't want to try or like they kind of don't give an effort at all. Like I will take like an like, oh, I'm so sorry, and that'll be fine. Um, it's just I think as humans, like we want to feel that there is some type of resolution and we're motivated to kind of like fix the problem so that going forward it can be changed, I guess. Yeah, what about you? Do you feel more motivated?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm not really one to leave reviews that often. This also goes into the psychology of it. For emotional reviews, positive reviews often highlight feelings, so feeling cared for and appreciated, and the negative reviews tend to cite specifics, so something like a slow shipping speed, a rude staff member, things along those lines. And like you said, usually we try to remedy the situation in real time. Like I definitely think I always try to put my best foot forward, and I would hope that if I am like purchasing a service or I'm going somewhere to maybe eat dinner, that people would be nice, because like that's kind of why you're spending extra money, like to be served. You would hope that your server would be friendly to you and would help you like enjoy yourself and have a good time. So I definitely feel like the emotional tie of it can help with also looking through reviews yourself. So I do read reviews before I go to places. I mean, especially if I'm going somewhere for like an experience, it could be something like, even going out to eat and making sure the reviews of the restaurant are good and the food's good and the service is good, because I just want to have a good time. I don't want to like go somewhere and then be like, oh, I'm disappointed if other people had that same experience. I think the feelings aspect of it is interesting, right? So it's like when the staff is rude and they don't make any sort of effort to resolve the situation, then I'm like more inclined to be like, okay, not going to come back here. I think for me, if I'm going to go somewhere, spend money, spend my time, I want to make sure that it's an enjoyable place to be. But I think you do have to use some caution when reading reviews, because you could tell when they're really emotionally charged. And then there's also the idea too, when it comes to like, most of the time I think satisfied customers don't leave reviews as often. So even if you have a good experience, you might tell people like word of mouth that you had a great experience at this place, but to take the time to actually go in and write a review for someone, it's just not as common. That also helps skews like the rating, because more people are more inclined to write things when it's not as great. More of the reviews for places are probably shifted a little bit skewed to not as great, just because of that fact alone. Um, would you say that reviews are more important than ads or brand messaging, or are the same or less important?
That one is tough. I guess for me, because I'm a little bit less review based, I guess, in general. I do think I'm big on the marketing and the brand messaging, only because kind of like as we're building into the negativity, not all negative reviews are meant to be potentially negative. I think if people can take it or use it as like constructive criticism, because not everyone's going to be perfect, but I feel like I will give people a little bit more of an open mind depending on how they promote their brand and how like they kind of like send their messaging, because I think people, there's just something about them where like if they feel wrong or they feel slighted, they use reviews now as like, I will get justice back for what I feel, and kind of like what you're saying, like it's so like emotionally charged, and we want to like right that wrong, where like if something goes right, you would think that, oh, we should kind of jump in that bucket, pour more in that bucket and spread more of that positivity. However, I feel like we find that a little less common than on the negative side. So I do think that if a brand maybe can still withhold their image, uh, at least for me, in my opinion, I think that maybe not all. Well, if they have like a 1 star across the board, that's like a totally different thing. But like I think like I will forego some of the bad reviews, like if they can stay consistent with what kind of message that they're sending.
Yeah. So I think that it's interesting that you bring that up because 25% of people are more likely to leave a review after a negative experience than a positive one, according to Zendesk. So we do have that a little bit of that negativity bias when it comes to looking at reviews yourself. So people are more motivated to share bad experiences, and it's actually a survival technique. It's human psychology to warn other people about an experience that they had. The goal with that, it's not to, tarnish a business. It's really more so to like warn other people that they don't want to invest their time and money in something that maybe you feel like wasn't justified for yourself. But I think that it's interesting to see that because there are definitely people, obviously there's the keyboard warriors out there that'll go through and, trash
Yeah.
brands all they want. But
Hmm.
that also falls into the question too. So, fake reviews. I think there's definitely been a rise of fake and paid reviews, and this comes from whether it's working with influencers or working with, people that their experience is going to be different than someone that just walked into the store. So, I've brought this up on my podcast before that when you have people that, for example, go to a really nice hotel and they had a really great experience, but the stay was comped and then their dinner was comped and they know they're there to create content, though their customer service experience that they might rave about online might be very different than someone that's actually paying for it and doesn't have a huge social media following that's going to be watching their content. And those reviews, I would say, like the paid reviews or like the paid input from influencers or people that have a very different experience, it doesn't leave like a little bit of a distrust situation where you not only don't trust the influencer, but you also don't trust the brand. Like if you were to go to that hotel and have a horrible experience, but you went because they promoted it, it definitely leaves that layer of like distrust between you and the influencer and then also the brand itself. So it's so important to be like strategic with those partnerships. How would you spot the difference between something that then when you see a review that's fake and paid versus when you see one that is authentic from like a genuine customer? Like is there anything that you notice when you like that you can help spot the difference?
I feel like when people are paid to promote or things are comped, I feel like everything seems like a little bit more over the top. And it's kind of like almost like reading a story, like it's too much like storybook, where I think people that do leave genuine reviews, it's a little bit more raw. Like, because everyone's on their keyboards or their phone. So, like, I notice if people spell things perfectly, they use better grammar, vocabulary, their punctuation's on point. I feel like sometimes those are like really, really key giveaways when like things are like almost too perfect. Yeah, so it's definitely interesting with like I forgot totally about like influencer reviews too, because that has taken a storm. And what I've noticed, like building on that with people, is that because people know that you can get things out of companies, I feel like they almost use reviews as leverage to get more of out of what they want. So like in fear or in threat of a bad review, the company will forego or comp or give for free or whatever it is because they're so afraid of those bad reviews. So on the flip side, there is power in leaving bad reviews because it can kind of give you something that you want that you wouldn't have had beforehand.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think now we can do a little bit of a pivot more towards landing and like how businesses could apply our personal experiences with leaving
Mm-hmm.
reviews to help better and further their businesses. When you respond to reviews, and this was in Harvard Business Review, even the negative ones, it can actually improve your brand perception by 80%. So, something that I do when I look through reviews is if I note that the business is replying back even to those bad reviews, that goes a long way with that business. Like, just knowing that they listen to their customers, that they're willing to make changes if necessary, or to explain a situation, I think that helps to really build that sense of trust along that brand. Also, if a business receives 5 or more fresh reviews each month, they can earn like up to 270% more conversions than those that aren't receiving reviews. As a business, it's really important to make sure that you are in the review game, and whether that means pushing out, great testimonials that you have that are super helpful, or if it means, pushing out just leave me a review just to get people talking, I think is really important for your business to grow. So do you think when you go into a business that businesses should ask for reviews, or do you feel like that adds a layer of pressure to customers?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think if businesses are trying to kind of like push kind of like that brand messaging or the like kind of like who they are. Well, I guess I'll put it in an example. Sometimes like you don't know until you ask. So in a world of service, it's such a fine line because you don't want to come off as too pushy. However, I feel like if you sometimes you don't ask, you will never know.
Right,
And
right.
then you never know like what people are motivated for. And I'll have to like fact check this. I remember reading like years ago in psychology is that if you don't get the review same day, as the days go on and you try to get them to do a review later, their experience diminishes
Yeah.
because days have gone on, other things have gone in their lives. So I think as like as a business, um definitely push for reviews, but maybe like put it into the actual experience. Like if they're not vibing, if they're not having fun, I don't know, maybe not push it, but if like you're getting along, like, like you're wanting to build your own business, like whatever it is, like I think incorporating that definitely, because sometimes like people forget to ask for help. And I think sometimes a review is that, and like you want to be positive and you don't want to seem like you're the person asking for help, but in a positive way, I think asking for help would be good.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. You can definitely feel out like their customer and see like how they're really, if they're really enjoying the experience. It's always nice to throw that in there. I think people forget sometimes too. I'm not one to typically leave a lot of reviews. So I think when you go somewhere and you see like they have the QR code and they give you a nice reminder, it's like, you know what, for small businesses, it's a great way to show support,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps them really further up in terms of SEO for like their Google My Business and all of those things. When you're looking at buying something, and for me, this is definitely applies to Amazon, but do you think that star ratings matter more than the written review itself, or do you think the review matters more?
For me, I think the review matters more because I think I can get depth in people and what their intentions are. I've written constructive criticism, but still given them 5 stars. I wish I could remember which one it is, but I remember that the experience wasn't bad and I wanted to be honest. However, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, it's just a 3 star because I didn't get exactly what I wanted. Especially like if it's like a new business. For I'll give another example. So we went to this really nice restaurant, me and my family. It was like a big group, a celebration. The waiter accidentally forgot my aunt's meal, but we had like 10 plus, 15 plus people. And she was like, oh no, it's fine. I'm not hungry. I don't want the food. So they thought that she was upset. So they brought her food to go. They gave her a discount. They came and tried to go like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And she goes, no, like I'm not actually upset. I just I'm not hungry. Time went by and I forgot. However, they were so afraid of a bad review over something so tiny that they were like willing to do all these things. So then, because they did all these things, my aunt was like, listen, I own a small business too. I get it. So she made, well, not made, I would have done it, but she asked my cousins, all of us to leave a review. She goes, leave a review, leave a review. Um, to really emphasize like how much that like they did help. And then so I'm trying to sit there and like remember like, okay, so it's 5 stars. Like, do I want to say like what do I want to say? Like, oh, even though we were a big group, they still made like, but I think with that, I gave them 5 stars, but then I went more in depth with
Hmm.
how they remedied the situation and like explained, like, yeah, we were a large group, things got complicated, but despite all that, they still made it an enjoyable experience. So for me, I will look past stars and read what they say, because then also people misclick stars too. If you look on Amazon, they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, most amazing product ever, 4 stars."
And 2 stars. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
I totally see that. I think if you're looking to make like a quick purchasing decision and you go on Amazon and there's like 4.5 stars and there's like 50,000 people reviewed it, it's just really quick to just click and buy it without really reading reviews. But I am definitely one that reads reviews. I'm just not really one that writes them as often. So I should probably get better at that, especially for small businesses. I think it's super helpful. What's one way to kind of word a review that's honest, but wouldn't harm a business? So you kind of did like the compliment sandwich where, oh, it's really great. And then they kind of messed up on this and then but things were okay. Would you say that if you're a customer writing a review or a business reading it, that you think it makes sense to, kind of sandwich it with a compliment? Or do you think it's better to just keep it short and just be like really blunt about what you maybe enjoyed or didn't like at all?
I guess for me, so I did like a quick study like on the difference of cultures, and Americans, we pride on individualism, and other cultures, like I'm just gonna use Asian cultures for example, is a little bit more like dignity based. So when it affects one, it affects all. And if someone honestly did like a terrible, terrible job, like they did not try to remedy, like I'm talking about like they offered zero type of remedy, like didn't even be like, oh, I'll refund it or send it back. Something like that. Then maybe there is a huge issue with the business that maybe needs to be addressed. And if you take it up to a higher level and they still don't address it, okay, maybe that's one thing. However, I think people are getting accustomed to like nitpick the bad things. So like sometimes like like have you ever been with a friend and you say like, "Oh, I'm going to practice something on you, give me some feedback." And for some reason, we all want to like nitpick the bad things because we're trying to push for improvement, right? And one way to improve is to fail. However, I think people forget that as like very social creatures, emotional creatures, we are more inclined to do better. Like, so there are studies that we're more inclined to do better if there is some positive reinforcement behind it. So I think if people remember, like, maybe put yourself in that situation, try to take your emotion out of it, and don't leave reviews for the sake of spiting someone else just because you want some type of justice served or you're trying to hurt the other person through a review. And take into mind that these are people's livelihoods or this is someone's character. And maybe people would be more inclined to leave more like thoughtful reviews.
Yeah, I think too, and this is maybe just for me because, I'm like always constantly like a go, go, go person and my head's like all over the place. Put it into ChatGPT and be like, leave a nice review, but mention something that happened
Yeah.
and whether it got resolved or how we can improve next time. And I think that's really worked well for me too. I reviewed a hotel that way and it actually came out great. They addressed, some of the
Mm-hmm.
concerns. The reason for doing that was if you're paying a premium, you expect a premium. I felt like the expectation wasn't met. However, I did still have a great time. I did make sure to include some things, but I think the goal of that was just so that people weren't deceived by what they saw online and that they were able to make a decision based off of an honest reflection of what happened. Reviews are helpful because it does give the business some feedback. It also does help customers in terms of making purchasing decisions. It's really important to, take some reviews with a grain of salt. You can definitely tell when they're very like emotionally charged and maybe those aren't the ones you want to make your purchasing decisions off of. As we wrap up this episode, let's just leave with, one last thought here, and that is, should reviews expire over time? Because businesses can change. A bad review from 5 years ago is not necessarily a reflection of the service that you would get from them today. So a great review from, however many years ago that they had the best experience ever, things change. right? Maybe the staff changed, maybe management changed, maybe their location changed. By reviews not expiring, does that mean we're actually getting an accurate picture, or is it maybe just like a snapshot of one experience, one night, how things went? Does it really reflect the business as a whole? Is the future of reviews maybe about, making sure it reflects the current time that they're in versus, oh, we got this great review from 5 years ago, we're going to highlight it on our website. So do you think reviews should have a shelf life is really the short question out of all of that.
Actually, that's a good thing to kind of bring up. I want to say yes, only because things do change, people do get better, and people like learn from their mistakes, or if there's a mistake, or if someone just really just they had a bad day and they took it out on the business. I feel like something like that shouldn't also stay to reflect the business, because things happen. And if that was something that were to happen, I feel like it would create that drive in service that maybe will help push more positivity if like maybe things had like a 2-year shelf life, and that way like things are fresh. Maybe people that are more motivated to be positive would kind of like jump in that boat now versus them before.
Sometimes they'll change the formulas, and there are people that pick up on it. So the review from last year about it being really great is awesome, but then they change the formula to maybe make things cheaper or whatever it was, and then people also realize that and then leave reviews on that. I do think there should be some sort of shelf life to reviews. I don't think it's really fair for a company to post a raving review from 12 years ago when the experience is very different now. I also think
Mhm.
that things change in the business. It's only fair to your customers to have them know that, like change in management or change in location, or we renovated or we didn't renovate, because something that's really cool and a nice gorgeous hotel room 20 years ago is going to be dated now. The shelf life is important just to provide that authenticity with your audience, and also for consumers to just be able to make the decision and not feel disappointed when they go in the business. Because I think if you read reviews and you go in and you're disappointed because the reviews were so great, it adds that extra kind of further disappointment versus just going in with no expectations. This is just some food for thought. Maybe it's not necessarily what we review or how we review it, but maybe it is when. Maybe when is a bigger question and kind of something that businesses should take back with them. So in closing, I would just leave this, if you feel compelled to write a review, do not react right away to things. I think it's always good to give yourself a little breather, a little wiggle room, calm down. If you had a great experience, I'm going to do this more. I'm going to try to remember to leave that review myself. And also to think, like, to reflect before you go and project your opinion on other people is just something we should do in general. So that's my last closing thought. Lizzie, I don't know if you have any other takeaways that you wanted to add before we wrap up this episode.
No, I think that was perfect.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lizzie, for joining us on the show again. This was fun. We have 2 other episodes that are going to be these like mini episodes where we end up blabbing for literally 25 minutes. But these mini episodes, we're going to talk about some different areas of business and psychology that are super interesting, and not just like us sitting here telling you about, whatever social media update is going on. I think these are a little bit more fun, get you a little bit thinking from both the consumer and the brand perspective. And I'm super excited for those. So definitely stay tuned.